We're back with Councilwoman Lois Tarkanian and her son, Congressional candidate Danny Tarkanian. And, you know, I find it so interesting that you come from such a predominant family. You know, Jerry Tarkanian being your dad, your husband, and each one of you so accomplished in your own right. But you have, I guess, different political leanings. Dan, you're a Republican, you know, candidate. You've been a Republican for quite a while. You're married to a very prominent Republican. Lois, you're basically a Democrat your whole life.
Democrat, right.
How did that happen?
You'd have to ask him.
Yeah,
how
I guess she's wondering how I
What
fell off
did
the
you grow
street.
up? Did you grow up? Your family was Democrats when you grew up?
My dad was completely apolitical, so I have no idea what he was. At the very end, he told me he was going to vote whichever way I told him to, but he probably told my mother he'd do the same. You know, I became a Republican and a conservative because I was raised through high school and then early part of college during the great Ronald Reagan years. And then you had Senator Paul Laxalt, who I just idolized. I worked for him as an intern for a short period of time, and I just thought he was the epitome of what a statesman was. And then in California, you had Governor George Deukmejian, an Armenian that, again, I thought was a great statesman. And those three guys were the most influential for me to get into politics and to be a Republican.
And you grew up, your mom, you were on the school board, right?
Yes.
You were on the school board for years, always had an interest in education?
Right, always.
Right?
She started the first private school death in the state of California when she was younger.
In California. First
Oh, really?
private.
So, did you live in California before you moved to Vegas?
Yes, yes. We moved from Long Beach.
Right, and you went to Gorman, right?
Yes.
So you went to, okay, I just want to get my facts straight. And your dad, so your dad was coaching in California at that time?
At Long Beach State, right.
Right. And what year did your family move to Las Vegas?
1973.
Right. And so how big of a change was that for you?
Are you kidding? We were living, you could walk to the beach, and he brought us, you know, it was pretty cool weather there, nice, and he brought us here, and he was telling me how great Vegas was, and it was really hot. It was really hot.
Just only my dad can handle it this way. We got here, I think it was in August, and we were staying at Circus for the first 6 weeks. And it was so hot, and we're used to the beach in Southern California. And then he'd tell us, like 11 o'clock at night, he'd say, come on out to the balcony. Look how wonderful this weather here. Only in Las Vegas can you have weather this wonderful at 11 o'clock at night. He always looked at the positive.
He did, yeah.
And of course, he went on to become a legendary figure in basketball. I was going to say college, but the entire sport of basketball.
Right.
What do you think contributed to so much to Jerry Tarkanian's success?
He was a non-judgmental type of person, number one. So he didn't go into something with a prejudgment. And secondly, he got along with almost everybody. And thirdly, he was just brilliant as a coach. He was absolutely brilliant. If we hadn't had all those battles with the NC2A, I believe his record would have been the best ever.
And for viewers, Danny, who may not have been in Las Vegas at that time, what exactly happened with the NCAA and Jerry Tarkanian?
Well, it all started when he was at Long Beach, so it predates UNLV. And my father was the only coach at that time that was willing to stand up and call the NC2A out for the travesties that they were committing against these small upstart schools that were playing primarily black players from the inner city. And they would put those schools on probation, declare those players ineligible. My dad said this was wrong, they shouldn't be doing this. And unfortunately, my dad had the same players, and they came after him. And when he left Long Beach, he came to UNLV, they followed him here. And instead of quitting and just saying, hey, I'll take the punishment and we'll move on, he fought him all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. Took 19 years, I think, or 18 years that battle. And it ultimately cost him his job here and probably a place in the top level as the greatest coach ever, but he also won a judgment at the end for $2.5 million, which I think showed most people that what he was saying was right.
And your dad was famous, for biting on towels. How did that start?
That's a great question, and he's asked a lot. He was coaching in his first championship game at Redlands High School, and the game he's yelling, and his mouth was getting dry, so he'd run over to the water fountain, and the water barely came up. You know how sometimes those water fountains, they don't spring up too high. So game went into overtime. He said, forget this, I'm going to wet a towel. And he chomped on it, got his mouth wet so he can yell. He won the game, and he said, this is my good luck charm for the rest of my career.
And, of course, you grew up playing basketball, and ultimately became a player on the team, a UNLV team, and it was, you know, an exciting, incredible years that you were there with your dad coaching. You had national prominence. You know, did your dad put pressure on you to play basketball?
First, absolutely not. He wanted me to play football, actually. It was really pushing me into accepting a football scholarship to one of the schools that I had. I didn't think I was good enough to play football. I didn't love football, quite honestly. If you play football, you better love it because you're getting beat up. So I went and played basketball. Now, my dad didn't want me to go here. He wanted me to go to Redlands Community College or some place like that where it was a smaller school where I could play both sports and not have any pressure of the big-time athletics the way it was at that time.
And Lois, at the same time that Jerry's coaching in high school and college, you're involved in education.
Right.
Now, there seems to be sometimes, you know, some tension between people on the differences between the educational aspects of school and the sports aspects.
Right.
Did you guys have arguments at home or discussions at home?
No, not really. I developed several tutoring programs for the youngsters. One of them, the federal government had asked me to maybe share it with a country in South America. So, we worked really hard. We did it. We started our tutoring program, and he wanted the money to go there to help the students. We knew we were taking students who had more problems and giving them a chance, and so we knew they had to have more help.
Yeah, these programs were his players, the UNLV players. She was the one that was actually tutoring them personally and then creating the programs to help them progress.
How did you and Jerry meet?
It's a great story.
We were at Fresno State University, and I was on the Justice Committee, and he got hauled up with some buddies before the committee because this was a big deal at that time. Now it's a nothing. But anyway, they kept pulling the plug out of the square dancers' music during lunchtime, ruined it for all the square dancers, and so they were hauled up before student court. And I was on student court. And so he asked me out, and I thought...
Before or after the decision?
Well, he met me at before the decision, and so I thought he was asking me out because he wanted to influence the decision. Right. So I made sure that, in fact, I think they were all going to give nothing practically to them, and I had them at least make sure that all through the year they had to put up all the voting booths and, all of that, at least to have some result from having done what they did.
And you were married how many years?
Almost 60.
Almost 60. And Jerry passed within the last year.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. And you were telling me earlier that you have so much memorabilia from him at the house. And I asked you, Danny, what was, I guess you split some of it up among some of the children. I asked you, what was the thing that you grabbed? What was the first thing you wanted?
What I wanted the most is the scrapbooks that my mother kept of my father's career. She kept a scrapbook of all the newspaper articles that she could find every year he coached. So going back to his first year at San Joaquin Memorial up until his last year at Fresno State. Some years she had 3 and 4 big books. I'm talking like this big, this thick. She'd have 3 or 4 of them from the national championship team and some of those others. I just think those are things that you can really pass on to your kids and let them know how wonderful their grandfather was.
What was it like playing for your dad?
Yeah. It was great. Anytime you have somebody that you love telling you how to do things, there's going to be friction. Because when he said something to me that maybe he'd say to another player as trying to get them to be better, I would take it more personal because I was his son and loved him. So that part was difficult, but we ended up being the first team in UNLV's history to be ranked #1 in the country. We turned the program back around. They were great through 1977, went to the Final Four, but after the NCAA put them on probation, they didn't go to the tournament for 5 years. My junior year started a 10-year run at UNLV that they won 330 games over 10 years, 10 straight league championships, the national championship. I'm very proud of that. I was really happy that I got to share that with my dad and be a part of it.
And at that point, when you finished UNLV, you had a decision to make, of a direction of where to go, what to do. You went to law school.
Yes.
Right? I would think that you gave some consideration to playing professional ball.
Yeah, I got drafted in the, back then they used to have 10 rounds. I got drafted in the 8th round, which was very late. I tried out for the San Antonio Spurs, and I got cut in their rookie free agent camp, but I got picked up to go to the veterans camp at Portland. I was a 14th player cut. They kept 12, so me and another guy got cut at the same time. But I got to play with Clyde Drexler and some other wonderful players. It was a great experience. If I could have done it over again, I would have went overseas and played professionally. But my dad never wanted his kids to move too far from him, and he had great influence over my decision making without me really knowing it. And he talked me out of it.
And how did law school change your direction?
Well, I wanted to get into public service. As I mentioned, those were the years I was following President Reagan, Laxalt, and Governor Dermasian, and I wanted to get into public service. At that time, almost all elected officials were attorneys. Now it's a negative to be an attorney and run for office. So that's the only reason why I went to law school, was because of that.
Right, and you got out of law school and you decided to stay involved in politics.
Well, you know what happened to me. I was scared to death to talk in front of people. Scared to death. I mean, just incredibly panic, and because of that, I didn't go into public, run for anything politically. I practiced law for, I think it was 7 years. Then my dad got the job at Fresno State, and I went and coached with him through the end of his career, which I think was another 7 years. And then when I came back, I said, look, I got to put those fears behind me. I'm getting too old to put this off. So I decided to get into, to run for office when I moved back to Las Vegas in 2002.
Or did you take a class or go through, how did you get, I mean, when you ask people what the number one fear that they have is, it's speaking in public.
Yeah, it certainly was mine. I mean, I would speak and I would not breathe, and I would be almost turning blue. I couldn't get the words out. My wife was in theater arts her whole life. She took acting classes, and she'd get mad at me because she'd say, why are you so nervous? Why aren't you doing this better? I said, this is just not me. My dad told me this, and it's true. The more you get up there and do it, and you fight through, and you get through that fear, then you get a confidence and relax, and it gets a lot easier. I didn't get that point until the 2012 election. It took me 10 years, but I finally feel comfortable enough.
It's like playing basketball. Practice, 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 and you'll get better, right? Your wife was head of the Republican Party in Clark County, or
nope, the state of Nevada.
State of Nevada,
she was a
chairwoman, Republican Party. How did you meet her?
She says she met me waiting on me at first, and she's still waiting on me now. That's her little line. She was a waitress at a restaurant that I brought a high school coach in that was in town in Fresno visiting, and I met her and just loved her first time I met her, and asked her out. She said no, and no, she said yes, and then she got back with her old boyfriend. So I had to wait another 2 months before I got another shot.
You're a patient man. You're a patient man. And Councilwoman, you went from the board, the Clark County Board of Education to City of Las Vegas, City Council. Right. Mm-hmm. Why that transition?
Well,
I mean, you can do a lot more effective.
I was 12 years on the school board, and I feel 12 years is long enough, and you give someone else a chance. And
it was before term limits, too, right? You could have stayed.
Yes, I could have stayed.
Forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I could have stayed, yeah. But I felt that 12 years was enough, and I still wanted to do community service, so I ran for the city council. I will tell you, I think the city council is the place where you can be more of a public servant than a politician. I really believe that. You're closer to the people. You can help them get trees that were knocked down. You can help them get their, little
get
thing.
something done. Unlike Washington.
That's exactly how I feel. You little things that maybe most people wouldn't think was important, but they are important to the person. And I believe I've been able to help our communities live a safer and a better life, and that's what I wanted.
Yeah, I mean, for instance, when people talk about the environment and the big picture, I mean, you feel so helpless as an individual to do anything. But in local city politics, you can make a difference on your street, in front of your house.
Right, you can make a difference for the people, and that's what I enjoy that very much. The county commission is another place where you can do things, but the county commission has all these big wheel. The casinos, the strip, and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. It's not the same as the little person who maybe has kids trampling over their lawn or jumping the fence or afraid. You know what I'm saying? you have to spend your time with the bigger things on the county commission, where as you have some of the big things on the city council also.
Sure.
But you can do other things and get face to face, and I enjoy that very much.
Yeah. Now, you've heard your mom, Dan, say that you can really make a difference in the city world of politics. You want to be going to the national world in Washington. You hear what she's saying? You have any thoughts about that?
Well, sure. What she's saying, the biggest thing, I think, the impact that she has on why she loves it so much and is still doing it is because she can see the impact her decisions have directly on the people. I mean, she sees her neighbors, or she'll see people, or even our family will see people say, hey, your mother did such a great thing, protecting us here or there. But I look at it in this country has been an incredibly great to my family. My grandmother Rose escaped the Armenian genocide, came to America, couldn't speak English, didn't have a penny in her pocket, and my dad became the greatest college coach in history. My mother has all the great things that she's talked about here. And those things that made this country so great are disappearing. We've got, our country is changing, and if we had an hour, we can go on about all the different things that are making it change. And the only way we can stop that change and turn it back to what's made our country so great is if you get some people that will go back to Washington, that have the determination and the guts. They aren't afraid to fail and will do what they truly believe in to get this thing turned around. I believe I have those qualities.
What do you think? I mean, growing up in a household with Jerry Tarkanian and Lois Tarkanian, and they must have, both of them, a major influences in the values that you grew up with. What is and when you meld those together, what is the most important trait that you've come out with?
You're the different, and with respect to my mother, just the fact she's steadfast, honest, and you can't change her mind no matter how close you are with her. Her first, one of her first decisions she ever had to make was a decision dealing with Irwin Lasky, who was my dad's biggest booster, and she ruled against him, and Irwin couldn't believe it. But and it wasn't because she didn't like Irwin; she loved Irwin, but she wouldn't back down. So the honesty with her and steadfast, not being able to buckle. With my dad, the thing that I got the most from him, which nobody gives him credit like they should, is he was such a great people person. He would sit there, he'd talk to people, he would make them feel good, and he'd listen to them. And I'm trying to do. I'm nowhere close to where he was, but I'm trying to get better at it.
You could be a waiter. You could be somebody who's inebriated next to you, or you could be anybody. But he would take time. He would talk with them, and when he passed away, we got lots of letters and notes from people who said, I was at Michigan State, and I was the assistant there on the newspaper and student newspaper, and your dad was so good and took so much time. Or I met your husband someplace, and he took the time. He did. He loved people.
Made an impact on
and it didn't
people's
matter
lives.
if you were a king or you were a pauper. It didn't matter.
With all the celebrity stuff that he was getting, he was doing all the things that nobody's ever going to find out about, or that he would talk about, or you get any recognition from. And you don't see that too much with these big-time coaches now. I mean, they're so much more on a celebrity level. Well, my dad was great with the people, and I think that's the most important thing.
And today, these celebrity coaches make so much money. And it wasn't like that for your dad, was it?
You know what's really funny? My dad used to say all the time, that poor John Wood, and he worked so long and hard, and I think the most he ever made was $30,000. He's living in a one-studio apartment in L.A. after his career ended. Look how much money I'm making. He was making $200,000-300,000 a year at the time. They thought how wonderful that is.
Right.
Yeah.
Bad coaches today in college basketball making $1.5 million, $2 million. It's crazy the amount they're paying them. I understand that's what the free market pays, but my dad would be the first to tell you they were overpaid.
Let me ask you this. So my personal opinion is that I think college athletes should be paid something. I think they give up, they work hard, they're balancing, practice and education, and a lot of them don't have the resources with their families to pay mortgages, and the NCAA has kind of put them in a position where they're kind of starving.
That's exactly.
I will tell you, you couldn't have them over your house for a meal.
Right.
That was a violation. It was crazy.
You couldn't drive them to school. There was all kinds, and those are
If
things.
they were in the rain,
They've
and you were
changed
passing them by, you couldn't pick them up.
They changed those rules now because of my dad's fights. After they charged UNLV with those violations, they changed the rules because they knew how bad that was. I wrote a book on my father. I hope to get it published next year, and a lot of it deals with exactly what you said. college basketball or college football, the two major sports, when the NCAA was created, you had all these middle class to upper class white kids that were from good, well-off families.
Didn't have to worry about the money.
Didn't have to worry about the money. But now the predominant athletes in both of those sports are inner city kids that don't have very much money, and the rules with the NCAA haven't changed. They keep them the same, where you can't, one, they can't work, they can't make any money off their name or likeness. They were taking away all of their Pell Grants originally, the kids that qualified, and then they took lesser and lesser, but they've even taken away the financial aid these kids had. So the only way those kids could live a decent college life was if you broke NCAA rules. And I'm talking about the smaller ones, but the ones that allowed them to live with dignity like other college kids. And that's what my father felt was so unfair. It isn't that you pay players where they could make a big sum of money, but let them live like the rest of college.
Let them have something. And we're out of time. But you promised me that you'll come back. You're writing a book about your dad. It sounds really exciting. So thank you so much. Danny Tarkanian, Congressional candidate for the Republican Party District 3, Congressional District 3, and Councilwoman Lois Tarkanian. It's great to see you again.
Nice to see
Thank
you
you.
too, Ed.
Get in an accident, you're hurt, you call Ed.
Ed Bernstein?
You can handle it yourself, or you can call Ed Bernstein.
Don't try to do it on your own.
Enough said. Call Ed.